So just to review, there's 4 stages that I've gone over. I mean, this is the 4th stage of sort of the life cycle of a growth stock. The first stage is the basing period. The second stage is the huge move that you usually get from a great growth stock. The third phase is the top, which lots of times on a stock that makes a big move, the top is fairly short. And then the 4th stage is the down move. And so what's interesting is in all these stages, you get a clue of what might happen sometimes right before, before things start changing. You get clues before the downtrend starts because of volume and things like that. So this is the 4th stage is the down move, and what is happening towards that, in that, fairly obvious, but on Tal Education, the stock breaks out, and it breaks out on 2/9, which is February 9th of this year. Stock breaks out of a decent base. It's a long base. I mean, it looks like it's almost 6 months long. Comes out, doesn't really get a whole lot of volume, about a little over average daily volume. The very next day, it also has some fairly good volume, just above average daily volume, and continues for the next few days on lighter volume. But then what happens is starting around the 22nd, the 23rd, the stock starts falling, and it gives up ground pretty quickly, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row of where the stock is down. And if you look back on the move that stock has made, even over the last number of months, there were very few times where it even had more than 3 days down. So the change is in character is dramatic. And then it actually has 1 day up on volume, and then it goes down for another 3 days. So it's 7 out of the last 8 days are down. That's very, very different than what the stock has ever done. And then it really comes home. I guess 11 million shares were traded, and the stock gaps down and has a huge fall on March 8th. And it's below, and it's through the 50-day, through the 200-day. It breaks 2 moving averages on the, in 3 days, it breaks both moving averages. Tries to rally back up on some good volume, but then it comes back down. And that's the other characteristic, is that stocks in their stage 4 are trading below what used to be, in most cases, they're trading above their 50 days and their 200-day moving averages. They're living below their moving averages. And then the stock falls dramatically. Look how many days in a row, all the way down to 48.53. And then it tries to rally. And this is what I call a weak kind of wedging rally, where the stock in 3 days had dropped from a high of about, looks like 63, all the way down to 48. It takes about 4 to 5 weeks to retrace that the drop that took place in 3 days. It takes 5 or 6 weeks to get back, or let's say 4 to 5 weeks to get back what happened in 3 days. That's just very, very weak action. And I mean, if you hadn't sold before that, this is your sort of your last chance out. And then the stock just starts falling. And yeah, you've got, now this is associated with news. So I guess the Chinese government is cracking down on a lot of companies. So that's an example of what's happening during stage 4. The rallies are very weak. They're on lighter volume. The declines are huge. You get gap downs. You're under moving averages. The RS line has been broken, and then let's see if there's gaps usually occur to the downside. And the deeper the correction, the farther you get away from the highs, the harder it is for a stock to come back. But let's look at the other example, RARE,
Sure.
R-A-R-E.
RARE, and stay with the daily chart?
Yeah, you can go with the daily chart.
Okay.
Here's a stock that had a nice, a really nice move, and then got hit hard on some big volume on December 29th of last year. Came down hard 3 days in a row. Tried to, and actually held itself, tried to make another run back towards those highs. But the interesting thing is, look at the volume during that run back to 175.
Mm-hmm.
The volume, most of the volume, especially from 140 to 175, it never traded average daily volume. And it's just telling you, I guess the institutions they've just left this stock, or they're selling on the way up. That's a great clue to tell you that maybe the move is over, when the demand when the demand on the upside is so much less than the drop that the stock took at the end of the year. Then, and the stock held the 50-day moving average up until, it looks like, February 16th, where it broke that 50-day,
Mm-hmm.
went down for a couple more days, tried to rally, couldn't get back up through that 50-day moving average. That's another sign that you're in trouble, and especially after the stock has made a great move. I mean, the last move, it went from 90 to 180. So now below the 50-day, can't get back above it. The volume is strong to the downside, and there you get another block of volume from February 10th for 6 days in a row. It's all on the downside. And again, that's different than in most. It looks like you've had maybe one situation where that occurred, but if you get that type of volume, you get increased volume versus the up volume, more reason to get out. Then here's a wedging light rally from 110 up to 133. If you could draw that, line in.
Right there. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And see these rallies, everything that occurred on the rights, from the top down, from 175, 179 area on the right side, is completely opposite of what occurred on the upside. The whole situation, the whole supply demand situation of a stock in a downtrend versus uptrend is completely reversed. And that's something you should really try to recognize. Which side of the move are you on? If you're on that right side, if you're on the downside, you're not going to see the same things you saw on the left side. And so you see wedging rallies on light volume. Volume picks up again, and this thing just had weak rallies all across the board, and it's still in a downtrend. It's still living. Look how many it looks like it's tried about 4 different times to get back above the 50-day moving average.
Mm-hmm.
When it went through 119, and then a few weeks later, and then 105, and then 102. This is when you see that, and it's occurred a couple of times, it's a big clue that you should not be in this stock anymore when it's in such a bad downtrend. And then let's go to one more, IBKR.
Sure.
This one's a little bit earlier, but it looks like it's in a downtrend. So here's a stock that was moving along. It went from 55 to 80. This is a smaller move, but it had a nice move from 55 to 80, all above the 50-day moving average. It had a correction down to 59, where it got support on the 50-day moving average, and actually got some huge volume. It looks like 3 million shares traded when it hit that 50-day, but it actually closed off the lows. I wouldn't say it was in the upper half, but it looks very close to half. So it held, then came back on some very nice volume about 5 or 6 days in a row, going up into the top. Then it broke hard. If you see the break that occurred on 1.4 million shares.
Oh, right here.
On
yeah,
324.
324, right.
It broke hard. It broke the 21-day. It came down, actually it looks like it got support just underneath that 50-day.
Mm-hmm.
But then you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row to the downside on increased volume, bigger volume than you had for the prior 5 or 6 weeks. So lots of selling by the institutions during during that period of time. And then you got 1 or 2 days of decent volume. It got it back up through the 50-day moving average when it rallied to 77.60. Then broke again on huge volume. It looks like it broke right after the earnings were reported, and has not been able to recover since on huge volume. A few times you've tried rallies and you got some good volume. It traded 4 million shares one day, but it did it on one day, and maybe it was going into an index or something, or rebalancing, but it's living below that 50-day moving average. And now the 50 days about to go through the 200-day. So just again, the thing to realize is that you study the right side of the chart, study the left side of the chart, and drawing a line right through the top on great stocks, and you'll get a great profile of what's happening in an uptrend versus what's happening on a downtrend. And it's something that you should really get to know, so you know where you are. Are you in stage 1? Are you in stage 2? Or are you starting to go into stage 3 with the topping action? And you just don't want to be in stage 4, because that's where the pain really starts occurring. So I'm always looking for stocks in that stage 1, just about to go into stage 2, or buying something that I missed the first breakout, buying it in stage 2 after it pulls back or builds a new base. So recognize the characteristics of all these stages, and it should help you dramatically in your performance and being on the right side of your stocks all the time.
David, it's interesting how, as the stock made that big sell-off over here, and then, as you mentioned, and astutely observed, the big break of the 50-day, the 21, and the 10, we actually were going into accelerating results for this company too.
Yeah, and sometimes, that's where I've always said, and a lot of people say the same thing, is that when I'm buying on technicals and fundamentals, but when I'm selling almost purely on technicals, because lots of times by the time the earnings slowdown occur, you're already way off the top in the stock. I mean, this is down 25% from the high, but the earnings still look very, very good. So, but I would suspect that next quarter is not going to be so good, because even on a reaction of a week or so ago of an earnings up 44%, the stock has continued to fall. So this is not something you should be in. This is something that if the earnings are really going to keep on coming through, maybe it's just going to start basing out here and then start turning. But that will be the beginning of stage 1. Moving into stage 2 is where you want to get it next time.
If we just take a moment, and then we're going to hit lightning mode, so we can go through a remaining batch of stocks for everyone. I just want to highlight the monthly charts of these stocks, so everyone knows that we're talking about stocks that actually did make some big moves here. And this is one that you had brought up initially, and would you say this one perhaps has had a strong enough move where stage 4 is likely happening now?
What, on
With
Interactive Brokers?
yeah, IBKR.
Yeah. I mean, the stock is definitely in a downtrend. It's below, especially below the 50-day, and the 200-day is still in an uptrend, but that's going to start flattening out and rolling over soon, especially if the stock cannot rally. But I would say all my stocks are above the 50-day. A lot of them are above the 21-day, and they're both in uptrends. And the 200-day moving is an uptrend. If you use that simple rule, I want all my stocks above the 50-day, and I want that 50-day in an uptrend. You're gonna have some very good stocks in your portfolio. Yes, there are times when the stock bases out for a long time and the 50-day catches up with it. That's fine. But if you can have most of your stocks above the 50-day and in an uptrend, you're going to be in good shape. Sometimes the most simple rules keep you on the right side of a stock and the right side of a market.
Excellent point there. And let's just look real quickly at TAL. That was the former huge winner in among Chinese ADSs and ADRs here. Look at the incredible damage seen in this stock after rallying I guess for 6 years from 6 to well over 60. I think the peak was 90. So we had a 15-fold move and just given all of that up in roughly 5 months. Very, very important to understand these signals that David is talking about, as well as the rest of the team about those late stage negative action. And finally, RARE, rare or ultragenics. This one's interesting to me, Dave, because this one hasn't had the same kind of big move long term, but the last move certainly was big.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean it had a move from 80 to 180, and now it's retraced that entire move, and
Hmm.
and you also see that gigantic volume on the downside in 2 months ago in this stock. So that's never a good sign when that much volume has been traded and the stock is down.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching Investors Business Daily on YouTube. If you want to watch more videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.